I think we're live. How are you guys doing? It's working, hopefully. Hey there, friends. Teacher Prix here with another video for you. This video is live, and I am very excited. If you are joining, say hello. Hopefully, people will be able to join. If you can't join, if you're watching the replay, that's awesome. I hope you enjoyed this masterclass. This is going to be a very nice and interesting class, and I will try to cover a lot of subjects, okay, related to vocabulary, all right? I see some people are joining. Thank you so much for joining. The live is working. I think last week I had some problems and I went live by accident. That was not my intention. I was testing a new software so that I could have myself, the camera, my presentation, and the chat all together. A friend was helping me and we made some mistakes. Okay, so how is this going to work? Mariani, I just got started. Welcome. Okay, and how is this going to start? This is a master class. Okay, so what does that mean? It means we're going to be together for some time. So get some water. Okay, get a notebook or a piece of paper, maybe something, a notepad, or your phone if you're more if you're like a techie geek or a techie savvy. If you prefer technology, go for it. It's going to be a long master class, maybe 40 minutes or so, maybe less. It depends. Okay, this is my first time doing a live master class. And at the end of the master class, after I give all the explanation and examples that I prepared, I'm going to open for questions. Okay, however, the questions should be connected, related with the class. All right, so I will be talking about vocabulary tips, important and very useful vocabulary tips that pre-intermediate and intermediate speakers should benefit from. And at the end, I'll be answering questions about vocabulary, okay? Things that you are worried about, questions you have about vocabulary, how to improve your vocabulary. So these are things that I will be covering, okay? So if you are excited, let me know here in the chat. I will be reading the chat at the end, but make sure to stay here with me. So let's get started. One thing that I get a lot from my subscribers, from my followers, is related to the level. Teacher Pricks, how do I know I am a pre-intermediate speaker or an intermediate speaker or a beginner or a false beginner? Do you know? Do you know how you know that? Let me know here in the chat if you have any idea of how you define your level. You know, obviously, we're always focused on speaking. Here on my channel, I always try to give you tips that are going to make you speak better, speak more confidently, improve your English in a way that you can talk to anyone, anywhere, anytime in English. But I know that I have people from all over the world watching. So, how do I know? I think the first thing we need to consider is, can you understand me? Can you understand my videos? Can you understand my message? That is the first sign that you are not such a basic speaker anymore. Because very honestly, basic speakers could not understand this, would not be able to understand me speaking 100% of the time in English. So this is a first sign that you are at least a pre-intermediate speaker. Okay, now of course we all want to talk, and I think I always read your comments, and the number one complaint is, teacher, I can understand, but I can't speak. Someone has just said that in the chat. Teacher, I cannot speak. Oh my God. I understand your frustration. It's real. The pain is real. So, how do you know if you are a pre intermediate speaker? Let's think about a basic student. A basic student has a lot of limitations, okay? A basic speaker cannot talk about difficult subjects, okay? A basic speaker cannot make long sentences, extremely long sentences. A basic speaker cannot understand a long question. So these are some signs that you are a basic speaker. You cannot understand long sentences. You cannot make long sentences. You cannot express yourself in long sentences. When you speak, you can speak, but you speak more basic phrases, individual phrases. It's very difficult for a basic speaker to make longer phrases or to connect phrases together using linking words, connectors. So a basic speaker doesn't use that, okay? Another thing about a basic speaker will easily talk about himself, but in a basic way. A basic speaker can introduce himself, okay? He can make introductions, talk about who he is or who she is, their age, their country, their job, their occupation, their location where they live, and they can talk a little bit about their preferences, interests, okay? They can talk about what they like to do, about what they don't like to do. They can also talk a little bit about their plans, but not long term plans, because when we talk about long term plans, we usually have to make more complex phrases because we are describing dreams and goals and aspirations. So it is a little bit more difficult for basic speakers to do that. So when I say plans, a basic speaker will basically talk about next weekend plans, next vacation plans. Okay, so another sign that basic speakers are basic. Okay, they cannot communicate as in a fluent way like intermediate speakers. But one thing that I always share with my students is you can be fluent at your level. Why not? Many times we are so worried about fluency, fluency, fluency. Well, you can master your level. You can master your basic level. You can master your intermediate level. You can master your advanced level. So, fluency can be connected with your level. So, many times the students ignore that. They think of fluency as something very far away. But no, fluency can start at the level you are right now. So if you are a pre-intermediate speaker, become a master, become a fluent intermediate or pre-intermediate speaker because that can be done. Sometimes students are too worried about reaching an advanced level and they don't focus on improving their strategies and techniques in their level. Okay? So, as I was saying, this is another sign that you are a pre intermediate speaker because you would be able to talk a little bit more about yourself, about the things you enjoy, about the places you want to visit. You can talk a little bit more about your interests and about your goals, about your plans. You can also describe problems more easily than a beginner. Okay, so these are some things that will differ a beginner from a pre-intermediate speaker. A pre-intermediate speaker also, as I said, understands a little bit more than a basic speaker. And many times the students they come to me and they say, people who are interested in my classes or who follow me on my channel, and they say, teacher, I am a basic speaker, but I understand everybody. That's not necessarily true, all right? And how do I know that? Because I have tested. Many speakers who tell me who are basic but have a perfect listening in their first class with me, in their first interview with me, when I ask them a lot of questions, they don't understand. So we need to be very realistic and honest with ourselves that when we are when we are considering understanding people. So if you don't understand everything or most of the sentences, or at least 60% of what I say, if you understand less than half, less than 50%, then you're definitely not a very strong speaker. You are probably at a basic level. Now, in a basic level, we have many different levels. Okay? So this is something that we also have to analyze. But as I said, the focus here is for pre-intermediate speakers and intermediate speakers. So I am helping you understand if you are a pre-intermediate speaker. From a little bit of the messages, I imagine so. So I want to know from you guys, are you a pre-intermediate speaker? Let me know here in the chat. I'm going to repeat here the question. I'm going to type for you guys. Are you a pre-intermediate speaker? If so, let me know here in the comments, okay? That is very important for me to know. So type here, yes, I am. If yes, okay. If no, type no, I'm not. And let's keep going. So these are some of the things that will tell if you are a pre-intermediate speaker or not. Some people are saying, awesome, Mr. King, Cassio, Mao King, awesome. Keep telling me, I want to know, okay? Keep here in the chat and invite more people to participate. So if you could share this video, it would be nice, would help bring more people to the live masterclass, but it's fine. Let's keep going. I was going to say something important about about being an intermediate speaker, but I forgot. That's what happens in live classes, you know. We don't always remember what we have to say. I made a beautiful plan, but plans don't always go how we intend them to go. So this is something that oh yes, I remember. Many times speakers believe that to know their level, they need to do a test, a written test, like a grammar quiz, a vocabulary quiz, and that's not always the case. Okay, to know that you are an intermediate speaker or a pre-intermediate speaker, I truly believe that it's much more connected to what you can speak than to what you can do as an exercise. I have known people that when I was at Harvard, just for as an example, when I was studying at Harvard, there were these amazing students there who were advanced. They were in my level, the last level, the top level, but they couldn't talk. So what's the point? They got 100%. They nailed the written test, but they couldn't communicate. So a test, a written test, is not enough to define your level. When I do a level test with my clients, future clients or prospects, I do an oral test. I make them talk what they know. And that's how I know if they can understand my questions and if they can answer those questions. That's how you know if you are not a beginner anymore. If you can understand my questions and if you can answer these questions, that's a good way to start. And these questions, they start from very basic and then they start to get a little bit more difficult, more challenging. So this is a good sign if you are a pre-intermediate or intermediate speaker. Oh, teacher Pricks, I am alone. How can I test my level because I have nobody to talk to me? I understand that. That's complicated. Now, if you want to test your level and you don't have anyone, that gets a little hard, but I have some suggestions, okay? There are many websites today where you can find questions, conversation subjects, and questions. So you could Google a subject. Oh, let's say I want to Google a subject about friendship. Friendship, so you can go to Google and you can say friendship, conversation, questions in English. You could type that on Google, on our best friend Google. You go there, you type that, then you will probably find 1 million where you can find questions about friendship, sorry. Then what do? After you go to the link and you click, you will see the questions. What are you going to do? You will try to answer the questions. If you can answer the questions orally, it has to be orally, okay, guys? And it cannot be written. The point is to test if you can answer the question for a little bit. That's a sign, okay? That doesn't mean you are a pre-intermediate speaker, but that's a good way to measure if you were able to express yourself and answer that question. A suggestion, record your voice. When you're answering the question, how are you going to remember what you said? record. Record your voice, then listen and see, okay, I understand. All right, I said this, I said that. Okay, that's good. A basic student cannot do that. Okay, a basic speaker can definitely not answer a question about friendship. A more difficult question about friendship will be very challenging to a pre-intermediate speaker. So this is my style. This is my style of testing someone's level. Of course, there are more things you can do, but this is a good way to start. Okay, very nice. So we can move on. Now, let's get down to the business because here first I like to start with how do you know if you're an intermediate or pre-intermediate speaker because that's important. You need to know if that message is good for you, and I imagine that for many of you guys that's the case. You are definitely a pre-intermediate or intermediate speaker, so that is awesome. All right. Can everybody hear me well? Let me know here in the chat, okay? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you see the presentation? Let me know because I'm testing the software. So it would be really cool if you could give me some feedback. Now, here, there is a typo mistake in vocabulary. So I had finished the file already. I had pushed the start and then I saw it. Sorry, guys, it's vocabulary. There is a Y that's missing in number one. My goodness. Anyways, so what happens to your speaking because of vocabulary? Many speakers they come to me and they say, "Teacher Pricks, I want to speak. Teacher Pricks, I need to improve my speaking. How do I improve my speaking?" But you don't go back to basics. When I talk about vocabulary, this is a very basic subject that many times the students ignore. Now, it's a little bit more difficult for English learners who study alone to find the best way to study vocabulary. And this is something that I like and I talk a lot to my clients about. You need to know how to study, what to study when you are in this level, because if you don't, it's going to be very difficult to improve, and consequently, you cannot talk. When I am giving classes to my pre-intermediate and intermediate speakers, most of the time when they cannot answer a question to me is because of vocabulary. Okay? They make structure mistakes. It's okay. I think making mistakes is part of the journey. The problem is not making mistakes. The problem is not knowing what words you should use, what kind of vocabulary you should use, and this stops many English speakers. So when you don't know the appropriate vocabulary for your level, in this case, pre-intermediate and intermediate speaker, it's very difficult to make progress in speaking, in your spoken ability, in your spoken language. Okay? So here, how do you know what kind of vocabulary you should study? One thing that I always talk to my clients about is the importance of context. Very important. If you don't know what you're going to talk about, how do you know what you study? Many English speakers, they come, oh, I want to be able to talk about everything. Well, everything is very general, everything is a lot. You need to think of what kind of subjects you want to master, you want to feel confident talking about. Some speakers say, Teacher, I want to be able to talk about myself. Okay, but what exactly? Your personality, your physical appearance, your dreams, your goals? See, four. I already have four subjects, and they are completely different from each other. So if you just want to say, I want to learn how to talk about myself, that is a little bit difficult to understand so that you can really focus on the key vocabulary and expressions and verbs that you should study. Okay, so that is something that I always talk to my clients. What do you want to talk about? And if your answer is everything, that's probably why your English is not, your spoken English you're speaking is not improving because you're trying to speak about everything. And at this moment, this is not what you should be doing. You should focus on something. Every week or every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, you should be focusing on a kind of conversation, on a subject, on a context. Okay? So here on this slide, I'm showing you what happens to your speaking because of your vocabulary, memorization techniques, and common mistakes when studying vocabulary. This will be the subjects that I'll be covering basically in this masterclass. I just started talking about what happens to your speaking because of vocabulary, and in a nutshell, because of vocabulary, you may not speak. Okay? Because if you think about it, when you were a basic student, you probably studied the most basic structures: present, past, future. If you don't know these guys, present, past, and future, it will be a little difficult for you to communicate. So I am assuming you already studied these guys, present, past, and future, because these are the times, the tenses when we express, when we talk about in conversations, when we tell about our lives, our experiences, our dreams, our routine. It's one of these three, okay? Either present, either past, or either future. So I am assuming you already studied that, so you have the basic structures. Now, if you don't have the vocabulary that is necessary to express yourself, it'll be difficult. So if you want to learn about everything, we should sit down and analyze exactly what you want to talk about. And that's a good way to start. Again, another experience I had at Harvard. When I was studying at Harvard, every week we had a different conversation subject. Every week we covered a different conversation. And consequently, we used different expressions, different vocabulary, because that's how you learn to communicate. But if you are studying alone, you have to do that work by yourself. So exploring different subjects is very important when you're trying to improve your spoken language. Okay? Now, moving on a little bit. Wrong page. I have many pages open here. Oh, yeah. Now, as a basic speaker, you have clear goals of what to study. Basic introductions, likes and dislikes, basic questions, numbers, email, talking about yourself in a basic way. So, do you agree with me that as a basic speaker, it's easier to know what you have to study? Because first, there's a lot of material. There are lots of things online that help you study basic things. So, adjectives, verbs, talking about routine, likes and dislikes, sports, your past activities, such as your last weekend, your last vacation. When we're talking about future, describing your next vacation, describing your next year, your plans for the future, in a very simple way, it's easier to know what you have to study. Even in other aspects, not just vocabulary. When you're studying grammar, let's say grammar, for example, you need to learn present, you need to learn past, you also need to learn numbers, adjectives, you also need to describe a little bit about your work. So it's easier to find the things you need to study. However, as you finish your basic level, how do you know you finished, teacher? How do I know? Well, because there's always something to learn. But as you start to watch basic videos and you're like, I know that. Oh man, I know this too. Oh, nice, teacher Pricks, but I already know that. Then it's probably time to find some more challenging things. Okay? Definitely time to do that. Now, here, when you finish that level and when you start to become familiar with a pre-intermediate level or an intermediate level, here there are two things that people don't usually know. Two things: subjects and words. Okay, let me type here for you because I didn't type it here on the presentation, and the presentation cannot be changed because I am super smart. So, subjects and nouns. Okay, not nouns, guys. Subjects and words. Subjects and words. Teacher Pricks, wake up. Maybe I need to drink more coffee. Nice. So as a basic speaker, you know what you have to do, but when you reach a pre-intermediate or intermediate level, you don't have a clear idea of what to study in terms of subjects and in terms of words, okay? Because words, that's another words to describe vocabulary. So it gets, it's not so clear for you anymore to know what exactly you need to study. Now, of course, we have YouTube, and today with YouTube, we have a lot of nice channels and lessons. But one thing that I noticed is the more options we have, the more complicated it gets. You have more than 1,000, 10,000 options of websites you can use, of channels you can watch. So it can get a little complicated. So in your level, let me drink some water. I'm thirsty. So in your level, it's difficult to define subjects and words you have to study. Now, Teacher Prix, what is your recommendation as a pre-intermediate speaker and or intermediate speaker who wants to improve their vocabulary to speak more clearly? Subjects. As I said, without a context, it gets very difficult to communicate. So, my recommendation here is try to find subjects that will really demand from you to give your opinion, okay? Every time we need to give opinion, it gets more complicated. Giving opinion is something very challenging, and this will help you improve your speaking and vocabulary. One thing helps the other. Vocabulary leads to speaking. Okay, so my recommendation here for the subject problem is find subjects that will help you give your opinion, because when you have this challenge, when you have a question that will demand an opinion from you, you have to study more. But not just anything. You have to study words that will help you, expressions that will help you give your opinion. And I am not talking about expressions to give opinion. No, 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 no. I'm talking about words, verbs, adjectives, nouns, adverbs that will help you make your phrase to express your opinion. Okay, so in your opinion, what are the three most important characteristics, traits in a friend? So here I am asking in your opinion, what are the three important characteristics in a friend? This is more difficult. First, a basic student cannot understand this question. It's very complex. It's very long. There are many elements in this question. But as a pre-intermediate, it would be easier for you to understand this question. So now what do you do? Now, based on this question, you will know what you need to improve, what you will need to learn so that you can answer this question. What are the three characteristics, the three traits that you find important in a friend? So I'm talking about characteristics, so I am talking about adjectives, words that could describe a person, okay? Or actions, things that people do that you find important, all right? So this would be an example to how you can improve your vocabulary according to the subject. Okay, so here I am giving you a subject. I chose friendship. Now, the second thing I suggested is questions that will demand you to give your opinion. Giving opinion, street boy answering your question is giving opinion is more complex. So to give your opinion, you will need to study more words and expressions to help you give an answer, because you can't just say, in my opinion, friends are important. No, you're not answering the question. What are the characteristics? And not just what are the characteristics, but why? So it gets more complicated. Okay, my friend, a good friend needs to be loyal. Okay, but why? Why loyal? This is the moment when you start to explain, well, okay, I believe that a friend needs to be loyal because I want to trust this friend, and this friend needs to show me with his attitudes that he is a loyal person. That's how you start to improve vocabulary and speaking, by having clear exercises, clear questions. If you don't have questions, how do you know how to answer them? Okay, so this is something that you can start working on. There are many websites today where you can type a subject, a conversation subject, and you will find many, many questions. There is a website that I personally like a lot. Let me, English with job topics. And in her website, she has conversation topics. And it's nice because you have a list of conversations. Let me type the link for you guys here. And she has there is a long list of subjects there. So basically, you will find the subject, you will find some questions about it, and that's how you can start practicing your vocabulary and your speaking. And remember, Teacher Pricks, I don't have anyone to practice speaking. I don't have anyone to practice speaking with. In this case, guys, let's focus on the class. Okay, and maintain the answers about English. All right, thank you very much. So in this website, you will find conversation subjects that will have questions that will guide you on what to say, on what to study. Okay, so this is something very important. So, for example, if you go and check this link after class, after this master class, you will see that there are many questions about the same subject, and that's how you can start practicing. Okay, because when you see the question, you will think, okay, how do I answer this question? What kind of words do I need? How can I say that in English? See, you will start to get inspired to answer this question. So that's how you study. And if you're alone, remember, speak aloud, orally, okay? So one thing I recommend is record. You practice a question, answering a question. So after that, record your answer so that you can listen to yourself. That's a good way to have a feedback from yourself at this moment because we have to use the best tools we have. And if right now you only have yourself, go for it. I did this and it worked. I've known many people who have studied alone and practiced speaking alone, and it helped. It worked. They speak. Okay. Now about the words. What can you do about words to help you talk? Okay. Now, one thing that I like to show my clients is the power of synonyms. If you are If you are a pre-intermediate speaker or intermediate speaker, it's time to use better words. I have nothing against I like, but it's time to use something else. I think a few weeks ago, I made a live video on my Instagram where I talked to people about to be into. Let me type here for you guys. And I talked about the power of I'm into, the conjugation I am, verb to be, into, which is a synonym for I like. When you use I am into, it means I am interested, I like something. So it's a very nice synonym. And many times when speakers are talking about their interests, they only use I like. Every time they're talking, they use I like. Now, there is nothing wrong with I like, it's okay. But if you are trying to use different words and a different vocabulary and improve your vocabulary, it's time to challenge yourself and look for synonyms. Look for other words that express a very similar or the same idea that you're looking for. And this is something that English learners do not always study. So, this is something I recommend. In my email list, I don't know if you are in my email list, but I have an email list where I send vocabulary, where I send expressions, where I send phrasal verbs, but not just a list. I send something useful, very short lists, okay? 7, 10 words, replacing other popular words. So, my idea here is to make you a better speaker, a better communicator, because when you know a new word, that improves not only your speaking, but also your listening. Many English learners have problems to understand native speakers because native speakers use a lot of different words, a lot of different expressions. So when I send this to my students and to the people in my email list, I send expressions that are used by native speakers and that you can replace by basic words that you learned when you were a basic speaker. So this is something that you definitely have to start working on, okay? Now, another thing that happens in this level, and many times English speakers get worried about, is teacher. The conversations get very long when I am an intermediate speaker or a pre-intermediate speaker. Does that mean I need to use complicated words to express myself? No. When I say that you should study synonyms and study new words, I'm not saying that you have to make complicated phrases, use complicated words. I have a story. When I was very young, I had this student. He was a teenager, okay? Very nice teenager. And he was always trying to learn a new word. He was very enthusiastic about learning new expressions and vocabulary. And one day we were talking about something, and he said, "Yes, teacher, I concur with you." And I was like, "What? You what?" "Yes, teacher, I concur with you." And I was like, "No, sweetie, you don't. You agree with me. You don't concur. Nope, nope, stop that. Don't do that." Now, what's the problem here? There's nothing wrong with concur, but he was using that verb at the wrong time with the wrong person. Concur is a little bit more formal. It's much more common in written language, but you can use in spoken language, but in very specific situations. Most of the time, English speakers use agree. Okay? Now, this student didn't know that, and after I explained, he understood. He was trying to use something different, something more complex, but he ended up using something incorrect. So, speaking more clearly and using better vocabulary doesn't mean you have to use complicated words. You need to use words that Americans, native speakers use. Okay? That's why using the right sources to study is important, because if you study vocabulary in strange websites or websites that are not reliable, that you can't trust, then it gets a little complicated. You may start learning some weird words that native speakers don't use. And when I say native speakers, it's not just Americans, but Canadians, British, Australian, okay? So think about that. When you want to express yourself, you want to be simple. You don't want to use complicated words. But at some point, it's important to improve your vocabulary, because if you don't, you will have problems to speak, and you will have problems to understand, because native speakers use different words all the time. Okay? So that's my focus here. Now, now I'm going to show you some memorization techniques, because I know that many people, or many of you maybe, have problems to memorize words. Tell me, do you have problems to memorize words, to remember words? Tell me here in the chat. Yes, no, sometimes, it depends. I want to know. I'm checking the comments, and at the end of my explanation of my lesson, I will open for questions and answers. So I hope you stay until the end. I hope you are a true follower, loyal, and stay until the end so that I can answer your questions. So, do you have problems to memorize words? Street Boy says yes. I want to know. Tell me, guys, here in the chat. Okay? Nice. So I'm going to show you some techniques that I use, that I have used on my clients, that helped not just my clients, but myself. So it's something that I always recommend, because these techniques, these strategies work. Okay, so the first thing that I like to show here, I hope you can see it clearly, is mind maps. Let's start with mind maps. Okay, here I have two beautiful images, pictures for you guys. I see that many people are saying yes, that they have problems to memorize. Yes, this is a common problem. Okay, someone says, I'm a forgetful man. I understand. I sometimes forget. Now, what do we do here? A mind map is a construction of words that will help you remember a lot of vocabulary connected to one subject. So if you see here in the image with the words, not the pictures, the words, okay? In the image, in the center, I have home construction. And around home construction, I will have a lot of words connected with home construction. This is a mind map, okay? This is how you can start working on memorizing the words. Now, what is nice is you can write the words that are connected to home construction in this example, and then you can start looking for the explanations, looking up the explanations in a dictionary. Okay, I really like to do this. It's very well organized, and you can create several different kinds of mind maps with words, one subject in the center, and then words that are connected to, in this case, home construction. Okay. Now, the next image next to home construction, if you pay attention, I have a word, household. I would prefer to say home appliances, but household is fine. And then I have lots of images that are connected with household, home appliances. Now, here I don't have the words in English because it's an image I bought on a website. But what I do, for example, is I create my mind map with the images and then I write the words in English, of course. And then here, this mind map is all connected with household subjects. So there are many images that will help me. And next to the image, I can write the word, the explanation. And this is all in English. This is something that for visual learners will work very well. And if you are not a visual learner, but you really like to write and read, this is also going to work really well for you. Teacher, I am an auditory learner. How can I use mind maps to help me, an auditory learner? I have a suggestion for you again. Your phone, you're going to download a recorder app, and then you're going to create one subject, home construction. And you will start talking. Oops. You will start talking and describing the words connected with home construction. You will save, and every time you study the vocabulary, you will listen. I am an auditory learner, so I do this a lot. I have many audios of myself describing words in English because that is easier for me to memorize. So, what kind of learner are you? That's very important. So, if you are a visual person, if you, when you were saying, when you could see these pictures, you started to imagine the things, you are probably a visual learner. Okay, so this works really well for visual learners, people who like to write, kinesthetic, people who like to draw, that really are very artistic. This will work really well too. Okay. Now, if someone is saying that prefers to record audios, you're probably an auditory learner. So I understand. So auditory learners, they handle recording, listening to their own voice very well. This is a very effective way to learn. Now, storytelling, the next way to memorize something. I love storytelling. What is that? Well, you will need to use your imagination, your creativity. And that's the challenge. Remember, if you are a pre-intermediate speaker, it's time to work hard. And storytelling is a good way to do that. First, think about the subject. What is your story going to be about? And now, what vocabulary do you need to tell your story? And after that, you can start. You can start telling your story. Okay? If you are an auditory learner, tell your story. Here, record the audio. If you prefer to write, you can write, you can even draw. so that you can see the story, the pictures to help you, but also writing the story. The focus is English, not your drawing skills. Okay? This is a very good way to help you memorize because when you tell a story, you are giving a context. Okay? And the context is key. Okay? I need to drink water because I'm thirsty and I have a sore throat today. Anyways, very good example. Now, you can also use flashcards, okay? Teacher, I love using flashcards. It's amazing. Yes, I know it's amazing. But are you using it the wrong way? Hmm. Many people tell me about Anki and how amazing Anki is and how awesome it is because it helps me learn words. But are you using it the right way? What do you mean, Teacher Briggs? If you are using this kind of app like Anki or flashcards with translation, my friend, that's the wrong way, okay? You're not helping your brain memorize the word because you are connecting your language and the English language and you're not giving a context. For example, I have here a picture, an image of the Anki flashcard. Here, the translation is in Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, and then the word in English. What's the problem here? First, I have no context. Okay, I have their feelings. Okay, but I have no example. I have nothing. I have nothing that will help me remember the word in English, an example in English that will help me remember. When you do that, you may learn. Okay, I'm not saying that you won't, but when you have a conversation with someone, you will probably think more slowly. It'll be more difficult for you to remember fast. That's how you study flashcards incorrectly. Now, how do I do it then, teacher? There's it's simple, an explanation and an example. Okay, so first you give the explanation, what is this word? And next you write an example, something, it cannot be any example. Okay, many students get confused and a little lost there. It's not just any example, it's an example that will help you remember. Okay, something that will help you remember the word. That's how you need to study with flashcards. Okay, this is a suggestion. Many English learners prefer to translate. I prefer to understand. It's better to understand a word than to translate it because then when you understand in English, you focus on thinking in English. And when you translate the word, you focus on translation, you focus on your language, you're not focusing on English. Okay? So this is a recommendation. Anki is a free app. It's very good, but you have to use it strategically. Okay? Awesome. Moving on. If I find the presentation. Ah, yes. Then we have another strategy. This is more traditional, okay, which is write, look, cover, repeat. The repetition is a very effective style in anything you're doing, okay? So it's very nice to repeat, 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 and learn. But here, basically, what I'm telling is, and to do this, you need to know if this is your style, your learning style. But basically, what I'm saying is something that is right, then you look and read, then you cover. What's that? Okay, that's blah blah blah. All right, I remember. And then you check, and then you do it again. Okay, so this is a classic learning style. You write the word, you write the definition, maybe an example, then you cover. Surprise. Oh, okay, it's that, that, and that. You check, good, do it again until you feel comfortable with the word. This works really well for some speakers. It doesn't work well for everybody. Again, you need to know to better understand your learning style. If you are a visual person, this may work. Try to include some images, but it is something that may help you learn new words, okay? And remember, use the right representational system, auditory, visual, kinesthetic, okay? Someone said, how about using post-its? That's great. You can. It doesn't matter the source. You can write on a piece of paper, on a post-it. It's good. All pieces of paper will work. It's just the style. Write, look, cover, repeat. If you do that, it's a very classic and very successful way to study vocabulary. Okay? Awesome. Now, common mistakes students make when they are studying vocabulary. Quality versus quantity. They focus too much on how many words they're learning and they forget the quality. Teacher, what do you mean by quality? When I say quality, I refer to when are you going to use these words you're studying? That's very important. If you don't have a situation, why are you studying that word? So if you just think, oh, that's nice, it was funny, it was a cool word, okay, but when? When can you use it? Do you have an example? Did you create an example with that word? So that's what I mean by quality versus quantity. If you don't have a clear situation in mind of when you can use that word will lose its quality because it doesn't help you in something specific. So when I am studying vocabulary, I always think of when I can use those words, in what situations I can use those words. And I am not focused at all on the number of words that I have to study. Because if I think about that as a fluent speaker, I'll go crazy. Because there are so many books for advanced speakers on vocabulary that I have never seen in my life. So I focus on things that I will use in conversations. For example, this semester I had a student who was a lawyer. So I knew that I would have to talk to this student a lot about law and specific cases. So I prepared myself. Situation, a real necessity. So, what is your necessity right now? What are the conversations that you want to master? So, that's quality. Quantity, not important. But if you want to know how many words you should learn a day, your speed, okay? You decide how many words you should study. You should respect your time, you should respect your routine, your limitations, because at the end of the day, you are the one who is going to do all the work. So you have to analyze how much you can study a day, how much you can learn a week. And remember, it's not just about learning and doing exercises, it's about using those words. Now, do you really need to know this word? It's the same thing that I said here, quality versus quantity. They're connected. If you don't need to, many students come to me, the teenagers, young learners, they're like, teacher, teach me some slang, some cool expressions native speakers use. But then I say, okay, when are you going to use this? Do you really need this right now? We're talking about you're in lesson two and we're talking about routine. Am I going to teach you this now? I'm probably going to make you more confused. Sometimes there are some words that will make you more confused. They are not going to help you. That's why you need to analyze the real necessity of learning a word. One thing that I see a lot in Facebook groups, you probably participate in some English groups, some English study groups, and I see a lot of people sharing some weird expressions or asking from Portuguese or from Spanish to English some weird expressions or very cultural expressions. And then I wonder, okay, what's the point of learning that expression? When are you going to use it? Do you really need this to become a better communicator? So we don't have a lot of time. Spend your time studying what really matters, what's really important to make you a better speaker. Now, the next problem, too simple all the time. What do I mean by that? Just like when I say that you should focus on what is really important, I'm also worried that in your level as a pre-intermediate or intermediate speaker, you should be learning more different vocabulary, more specific vocabulary. That's when I said earlier in this video, synonyms, okay? If you are too simple all the time, you are never making progress. You're never challenging yourself to use different expressions. So it's okay to use more complex expressions. You need to challenge yourself. As long as you have a real necessity, a real conversation, a real subject, then it's awesome. Go for it. Really learn different words. Okay? I'm so happy when I see your comments on my videos and say, "Teacher, that's awesome." And that's nice because awesome was not a word that many people, many learners used. And now many of you use this word. So that's great. It's better because you can say awesome, you can say cool, you can say great, but now you're using a different one. Okay, so this is how you improve and you insert a word that will really make a difference in your conversation skills. Okay, very well. Let's see if I have anything else. No, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. My answer to your Q. My A to your Q. Q and answer time. I have about 10, 15 minutes to answer your questions so you can get started and go crazy. Asa is asking me, "Teacher, what do you think about stories?" Asa or Asa, I'm not sure. If you're talking about books, I totally recommend books, okay? Books are great, their stories are great, and they will definitely help you see what's happening, understand, or even feel what's happening, okay? However, you need to respect your level. You cannot read anything that is too basic, but at the same time, you cannot read anything that is too difficult. You need to come in between, pre-intermediate. This is the level when you are in between. You're not super awesome, amazing, super advanced, but you're not a totally beginner anymore. So you need to find balance. And another thing, if it's your first time reading books, I recommend starting with something easy because it's your first time using this kind of material. So until you feel comfortable with books, use something easier, and then as you feel confident, go to more challenging stories. Okay? Awesome. Next questions. Sue, what do you think about reading books? Yes, I just answered this question. So, reading books is nice. Let's see. What other questions, guys, about the vocabulary lesson? Come on, let's participate. Teacher Prix, what's your mother tongue? I'm Brazilian. I speak Brazilian Portuguese. Thierry is saying, "I prefer comic books in English." Yes, comic books are nice. And one thing I like about comic books is you have a lot of images. Okay? So you're feeding your brain with a lot of visual material and words. So it's a very nice source. So if you don't like the traditional books, if you prefer comic books, go for it. It's a great suggestion. Do you remember Memorec? I don't know what that is. Is that a book, a website? Tell me here in the comments. I don't know what that is. Questions, guys? Come on. I don't know what Memorec is. I would have to check and see what it is. Oh, that's awesome. Nobody has questions for me about vocabulary, improving vocabulary. Hmm. And that's nice. 46 people watching. This is so cool. Thank you. We've been here for an hour. So it's nice. Let's see. Do you think it's good to write down the words? Yes, it is. It's very important to write the words because you are practicing memory. You're memorizing the words. So many English learners, because of technology, they prefer to type the words. But let me tell you one thing, when you're typing, you're not really memorizing the words. But when you're writing, you're forcing your brain to remember words, to memorize how you write them, and to memorize what they mean. So I definitely recommend uh, practicing writing when you're studying vocabulary. Kaiki, I know that you want to know the best way to. Oh, okay. Is writing the best way to improve speaking? Well, the video is about vocabulary, but writing is connected to vocabulary. Now, I don't think there is one answer to how you improve your speaking. I believe that by combining different activities, you can improve your speaking. And today, as I'm teaching about vocabulary, vocabulary is one very important aspect that will help you improve your speaking, and many students don't dedicate enough time to studying, reviewing vocabulary. And when I say studying, it's not just learning a new word, but learning how to use it, creating your examples, and then that's going to help you improve your speaking. Okay? Uh, Huda, thanks for the suggestion. uh, to make something like a small conversation and ask questions. I have many plans of live classes, masterclass classes to help students speak, ask questions, but we will mostly focus on the chat, of course, because it's a live video on YouTube, but that's a great suggestion. Let's see what other questions. My chat is updating. Okay, let's see. Hmm. Okay, let's see here. What about learning words? How do you think about memorize palace technique? I'm not very familiar with the memorize palace technique. I know that you use a place in your mind, you create a place in your mind where you can store information. Now, one thing that I like, I don't know much about this technique, I don't use it a lot, but what I like is about the concept, and I think it works because I studied neuro-linguistic programming, and in neuro-linguistic programming, we learn the power of doing constructions in our mind, visual constructions, and that's basically what you are doing. Now, Marianne, if you are asking me that, it's probably because you are a visual person. I don't know if you would have to analyze this, but if you are a visual person, creating a place that will help you memorize things, creating an area in your brain, that would be really cool. But I would have to go deep into this kind of memorization technique. It's nice. It's a way to build vocabulary and work on your memory. And it's really nice, especially if you are a visual learner. If I am an auditory learner, that would be a little bit more challenging for me to create this kind of space in my mind. Where can I store? Because I don't usually see things, I hear things a lot. But if you are that kind of person that listens to a lot of things, that would be nice. Okay? Now, what about learning words from news, articles, how to manage new terms inside them? Okay, Claudio, nice. First, you need to consider what kind of article you should be reading. Remember, respect your level. If you read something that is extremely challenging, extremely difficult for your level, you will come across a lot of difficult words, and consequently, it will be very difficult to memorize them. Now, one thing that I didn't mention here, and that's a nice, a very good question, Claudio. When we are studying vocabulary, it can get more difficult to memorize if it's a very advanced vocabulary. Okay, if it's a vocabulary that is very advanced for your level, if it's an expression that is very advanced for your level, you will have more difficulty to remember that word because it's just out of your league, at least temporarily. So that's why choosing appropriate articles for your level will help you understand the words you are learning in this article. All right, now learning words from articles is great. Please keep it up. And when you study these words, don't write down the words individually. Highlight the phrase, write it down, and then after that, explain the word, write it somewhere, explain the word, the definition, the explanation, not the translation, and you will have a real example from the article plus the explanation on your notebook. So that is a very efficient way to study vocabulary. Just keep in mind that you should read something that will respect your level. Okay? Uh, Okay, now Huda is asking a very nice question. Mariani, did I answer your question? I hope so. Okay, if you have more questions about it, let me know and I will prepare something more about these two techniques. One more question. I have a problem, or sometimes when I learn a new word, I don't know how to use it. Nice question, too. This happens to me. Sometimes I'm learning a new word and I don't know how to use it. So, how do I do it? Well, first of all, I go to my friend Google and I Google it. Okay? I know it may sound silly. Don't be angry at me. But when I don't know how to use a word, I go to Google and I type how to use that word. First, I look up the explanation, and usually on good dictionaries, you will find examples. One, two, or three. So what do? I check different websites, okay? I go on different dictionaries to find different examples. So I go on Collins, I go on Cambridge, I go on Oxford, I go on Google Dictionary, and I try to see the examples they can offer me. If I'm not happy with that, if I'm not happy with the explanations I get from those dictionaries, then I go to other sources. I go to Google and I just type the word that I want to know and I see what results will come to me. Articles, texts from the internet where people used this expression, and I will get inspired. I will see, they use it here, oh, they use it there. If that's not enough for me, I will go to YouTube and I will type the word and I will see what I'll get. Okay? Sometimes I get something, sometimes I do not get anything. But this is usually my process. I go and I look up the words in different sources. YouTube is a great source. I also like to use different dictionaries, a variety of dictionaries, so that I can get a better result. Okay? Awesome. Honey says, do you struggle to catch words from your brain in order to produce a speech? Ronnie, that's a great question. Ronnie is asking if I have problems if I struggle to catch words from my brain in order to produce a speech. Yes, but in very specific cases when I am translating. Ha, you thought Teacher Pricks didn't translate? Haha, I have to share this secret with you. When we are non-native speakers, we always have the challenge of translation. Because I am Brazilian, I speak Brazilian Portuguese. So when I don't know something in English, that's the moment when I struggle to make a phrase and speak. So what do? I take a deep breath and then I think of another way to say that thing. I work around my phrase and I create something else. So if you are having that problem, Ronnie, in conversations, it's probably because you don't know much about that vocabulary. So consequently, you are working really hard. So my recommendation is prepare yourself for those kinds of conversations. You're probably looking for translations and possibilities to make your phrase. And that happens to me, as I said. So when that happens to me, I take notes on what words I didn't know. What was the thing that I wanted to say but I couldn't? And then I study the vocabulary based on the conversation problems I had that stopped me, that caused me problems to communicate efficiently in that moment, in that situation. Okay? It's totally normal. It happens. So that's why you should pay attention to when that happens to you so that you can dedicate some time to study words that are connected to that. Okay? Nice. Heather, hi. If you have a question about vocabulary, now is the time. Uh, any other questions, guys? One more question before I go. If you have one more question, this is the time. I will answer another question and then I will get going because I have classes to give. No more questions? Okay, Claudio, should we absolutely avoid bilingual dictionaries? I think that's yes. Yes. And I like the word you said because you already have the answer. Absolutely. You should absolutely avoid uh, uh, your language to English dictionaries. Please, this should be your last resource, okay? You should try to study everything in English, and only if you have no choice, you use a translation, a translator, because that's really going to impact how much you speak, how fast you can speak in conversations, how fast you can remember. Because if you always study in your language, if you always study vocabulary in your language, every time you try to speak English with someone, you will always think in your language first before you can give your answer in English. But if you are always, now the other scenario, if you're always feeding your brain with things in English, consequently, there's a very good chance that after some time, you will start to think faster because everything you're giving to your brain is in English. That's what I do to myself. That's what I recommend to you guys. Awesome, people. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed. I intend to make a live video every Monday here with this style, doing a subject. You can send me an email with suggestions of subjects, okay? If you have a suggestion of something you would like to see next class, let me know and I will prepare something. I already have some ideas prepared for you. Other than that, have a wonderful night. Probably it's night for some, morning for others. Other than that, I'll see you next time. Bye.